Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange, MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and a warm welcome to the Elevate Business podcast. Both myself, Ange MacCabe, and Scott Russ are your hosts. We have the pleasure of introducing you to Lee Caraher, CEO of Double Forte PR and Digital Marketing. Is a widely acclaimed communication strategist known for her practical solutions to big problems. Lee is a strategic counselor, sometimes a writer, often a cajoler, and always a cheerleader to all Double Forte clients. She's also the author of Millennials Management, based on her experience with failing and then succeeding at retaining millennials, and the Boomerang Principle, about building lifetime employee loyalty. Welcome, Lee. We're so excited to have you here on the Elevate Business podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I passed the test.
You did. Scott's a gatekeeper. He does a great job at vetting to ensure.
I'm not messing around.
No, exactly. So Scott's had the pleasure to kind of do the green room with you. I'm excited to hear about your role and your journey with regards to Double Forte PR and digital marketing.
Well, let's see. Double Forte is a company I founded almost 20 years ago because I had to. Not because I thought I was going to ever be, start my own company, but my mom had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and lived 2,000 miles away from me. And I was like, well, I better get a job that I can be wherever I want to be. This is so pre-pandemic, like you couldn't be remote back then. And 20 years later, here we are still, which I couldn't even have fathomed when I started it, and still plugging along. Now I'm unemployable. That's how it works.
What I'm hearing is the joys of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Right.
Exactly.
The joys of being able to set your own rules and then realizing that your own rules might not work with other people, but okay, there you go.
That's amazing. And so from a leadership perspective, can you enlighten us with regards to maybe the Coles notes of the top highlights of your leadership learning over the past 20 years?
Well, I mean, I think I was always a fast riser when I started my career. So I was always, pretty much after I started, right out of college, and I've been in this career the whole time. I've had different iterations, inside, outside, all that kind of stuff. But pretty much always in a lead position, which really started in high school with leading music and sports and all that kind of stuff. When I started my own company, I wanted to create, I really disliked my last job intensely, like with the heat of the burning sun, disliked. And so when I started this company, I was like, how do I make sure that I create a company that I would want to work for? Because it's one thing to lead a company or be the head or own it. It's another thing to work for a company. I want to create a company that I would want to work for. So the first piece of that is just figuring out what your values are and figuring out, what are your rules of engagement. And I think the first piece of that leadership was trying to figure out what company I want to work for. Was the 4 rules that have really guided us since we started, even though the business model has changed, the business has changed. I started the company before Twitter, blah, blah, blah. So those 4 rules are: somebody other than myself has to be interested in the work, because I'm interested in everything. Like, here's a straw. We can do something with the straw. I'm the only one who cares about the straw. And I just think you do better work when you're interested in it. That's how you get people to come to work every day. Oh, I like this. This is a cool thing, right? The second thing is we have to be a good fit, right? You have to have the right expertise, the right experience, the right tools, the right point of view. And you have to have the right chemistry, because you can suck together. You can be a great agency and a great client and suck together if you don't have great chemistry, great fit, right? Number 3, you have to pay us. We like to eat. And number 4, no jerks. And if I knew you better, because you're Canadians, I'm not going to say the word I use here in the United States, starts with an A. But those 4 rules really set up everything about how we've progressed in the business over time. And then from the big mistake I made when I first started the company, when we first started, we only hired people with 10 years of experience. My previous job, I had run about, 650-ish people, and most of them were under 30. And that time they were Gen X, early, young Gen Xers in San Francisco, where there weren't enough of them. And I was done. I was like, I'm done. So when I started the company with 10 people with 10 years of experience, I'm like, I don't have to tell them anything. They just know what to do. I really thought this, and oh my God, I couldn't have been more wrong. Couldn't have been more wrong. Everybody needs to know where to go. Everybody needs to know what the standard is. Everybody needs to know your expectations. Everybody needs to know how they contribute. All these things. So I really learned very quickly at the beginning of the company that everybody needs leadership, and then how to do it. So that realization was sort of it was like, oh, bummer. I thought I wasn't going to have to do that, but it was such a dumb thing to even think that. I mean, I can't even believe I thought that. But in the end, it's my company. I set the standard, but it requires other people to show up. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm terrible by myself. I mean, I could have just done my own consultancy. Oh my God. I'd be my husband would be visiting me in the poorhouse. I mean, that's just how it works. So I knew I had to surround myself with people who would be good compliments and all this kind of stuff. So how do you make people want to come to work? How do you make people choose to follow you? Because there are not enough people who do what we do. There are not enough good people who do what we do. And they have to choose to come be with you. So that was has always been my mindset since I realized that everyone needed leadership.
Ange, where do we even start?
I know. I was like, from what I understand, when it kind of dialing back into the millennial piece and the thought process that, leaders don't need to lead, it kind of led you down the rabbit hole of writing 2 books, even around these topics.
Well, so when I started the thing about millennials, and are you guys millennials?
Take a guess.
95% of millennials don't admit to being millennials. So, so by definition, when I started the company in 2000, I didn't hire millennials, right? Because they were people who were at least 32 years old in 2002. So they were Gen Xers or Boomers, or no, we didn't have any silent generations, but those 3. Really just Gen Xers and Boomers. And then in 2008, when the economy just almost destroyed the planet, every time that happened, anytime I've been through this, right? I've been through it like 5 times, but I'd already been through it. So when you have that sort of economic, like just punch in the gut, either to your one company or to a whole country or whole world. And the first thing you need to do as a business owner is look at your model and say, well, how are we going to keep going? Number one. And then 2, like, how are we going to move from there? Because usually the model that got you to that moment where you're getting the punch in the gut is not the model that will take you after you've recovered from it. So, I figured out how to keep going. And then really in early 2000, I started thinking about, okay, so how we got through that period, how are we going to move forward? And then looking at the model is like, oh crap, we're going to run out of people who have 10 years of experience pretty soon because no one really hired, PR people didn't get hired from like late 99 to 2004 in San Francisco. That's the time when we were really just California based. San Francisco, so there was going to be a huge donut hole of people who were the least qualified to come to my company because I just had that age thing in my mind, right? So you always want to be bringing people from the bottom. That's just good business, bring people from the bottom and grow them up. And I realized we weren't going to have any left. So, oh my God, what are we going to do? So I said, oh, well, we better start hiring recent, new grads again. Like not again, but in this company. And I did not think anything of it. Again, 650 people in the first previous job, 2 jobs ago, I had another 700 people. Most of them were under 30. I was known for the person you wanted to work for. If you were young, blah, blah, blah. Like, what do I have to do differently? Well, I hired, when I say hired, the company hired 6. We're small. I think we were 20 people at that time, maybe. We hired 6 millennials within 8 weeks of each other. And they were all gone in 3 months, all of them. And in my career, I'd never had that ever happen. I mean, we had such a good process for hiring people. Oh my gosh. I'm like, what the heck? We walked 1 and the other 5 quit. Like, what the F just happened? And I think if it had happened over like a whole year, I would not have noticed it as much. But this was like a huge gut punch. This was such like, this was like personal to me. What the hell just happened? So I started, I started reading. I was like, what? I mean, I called my friends. They're like, oh, millennials, don't hire them. They're terrible. Like, well, what's a millennial? First of all, I didn't know what the hell it was. I was looking at recent graduates or younger people. So I started reading and everything. Again, that's 2011, 2010, somewhere in there, 2011. Everything was so negative. Oh my God, so negative. And I was like, how can 80 million people be entitled in this country? I was like, that is statistically impossible. So, and it was not really nothing. None of the stuff was written by leaders. It was written by analysts and it was written by journalists who don't lead people. And I was like, I sort of dismissed it. And I started doing my own research. And it was talking to everybody who quit. It was talking to the people. I was talking to other people, millennials. And I realized, oh, we got to change some stuff up. So really by trial and error, I figured it out for myself. And then it actually started moving into my client work because my clients have the same problem and we're a communications firm and all leadership is all communication. There's nothing about leading. You cannot lead without communicating. So my work started moving into that just sort of because one guy pointed out, oh my God, these millennials. And I just, what problem? We had that issue and here's what we did. And then they were like, you should write that book, Lee. I'm like, what book? What book are you talking about? That millennial thing. I was like, I don't have a book. In the end, a publisher came to me and said, please publish. We will publish that book. And so I just basically wrote the book really quickly. And it's written for teams. It's called Millennials Management. It is not written for management or millennials because it sounds like millennials can't be managers, but that's not. I actually hate the title. The salespeople wanted the title, but it's written for teams. And the back of every chapter is do's and don'ts for both groups so that they can work together to find a way to go forward. Because really what we're talking about is that was the beginning of the co-creation world of how teams need to co-create how they're going to move forward and can't just be forced to move forward in a certain way. Yeah. And the thing about millennials, which is, there are many things that are different frameworks. So today's, I think 22 or 23-year-olds is the first group of people who have been educated almost their entire education career in technology. Almost their entire career. My 24-year-old got an iPad in 8th grade, and it was so horrible for the whole. It was so horrible for the whole school. They were not prepared for what the iPad did to the dynamics. But now the 22-year-olds today, about pretty much the whole thing, their whole between middle school and high school and college. But here's what we realized. We have a language. We all have languages that are work languages or play, like whatever. We have languages. And so the things that we were doing is, a boss would say, get it to me by the end of the day. And it's very clear. I'm being extremely clear. Get it to me by the end of the day. That is a Word document on my desk by 5:00. I'm very clear. End of day. Well, end of day to the millennial group is 11:59:59. 11:59:59 is the number one deadline used in high school and college today. And it was in 2011. So they were giving things to us literally at 11:59:59 in that Google link, because that's how they did it in college. And we're like, what the hell is this? I said end of day, where the hell is it? Is a Word document on my desk. You said end of day. I got it at the end of day. So because we have this work language that did not reflect the cultural reality of this huge group of people, basically we're setting them up to fail and then blaming them for doing things that they thought were right. So we learned pretty quickly, well, no, I take it back. We didn't learn it all from the beginning. It took a while for us to learn, like, oh my gosh, we started digging into, like, where were we setting people, where we thought we were being clear and where we were actually letting those people be wrong and right at the same time, right in their framework and wrong in ours. So that just really started the whole thing, right? It started the whole thing about understanding how to think about it from someone else's point of view as opposed to the top-down model.
Exactly.
And we're a high input, low democracy place. It's very messy. But that's when we moved into this high input, low democracy model that is messy, but honors every person in the room and their ability to contribute. That's a very long answer. I'm sorry about that.
Don't apologize. It's interesting as part of the journey and brings you, brings us up to speed with you today, which is amazingly. What's kind of percolating in my mind right now is when you're talking about the nuances of work versus school versus personal languages and leadership-based communication, which I agree 100%. How has this then changed the way that you go about training your employees to ensure that they're growing up with you?
Again, and we started not having to train because I thought no one needed training.
No one needed leadership and nobody needed training,
rogue.
right?
Totally rogue.
No, you didn't last this long not knowing what to do. Oh my God. So training's definitely evolved over time. So there are hard skills and soft skills. And I brought over something I had developed from when I was at the big company in terms of the hard skill. It's sort of the leveling. Agencies are really built for promotion, right? They're built for training and promotion, and then each level means something. So I had brought this thing over to Double Forte, which really broke down all the hard and soft skills and the different levels. What would you expect from different levels? So I had that already, and that was already, people like, my colleagues in the other parts of the big organization, I was like, oh, can I use that? Sure, use that. Oh, please use it. Because it's really clear. Like, if you can do this, you can move forward. And if you can't, you can't, because the ambiguity is terrible. So a few things. One is we started with understanding who that person was. Okay, so instead of just training, slap in, it was, all right, so we all took, we did the Myers-Briggs, we did strength finders, we figured out if you're auditory or visual learners, all that stuff, right? So each person has a profile in our company. Who are they, right? And they choose photos that represent them and why. So that when you put together a team, who's on the team. So if you have a team that's all introverts, probably not gonna work. A team that's all extroverts, not gonna work either. So we try to put teams together that complement each other and have different personalities and different for their different roles and all that kind of stuff.
See, this is why I chose. Just interrupt you for a second here, Lee. Just a little anecdotal story. This is exactly why I chose Scott. He's a polar opposite to me.
Yeah.
In the sense of he's very analytical. We have our own acronym called KJs, or knee-jerk reaction. So it might be our first reaction, but we need some time to think about it and come back to the table. Whereas I'm not. I'm very much to the point, punchy, not punchy, I guess, and I guess comedic. I would identify myself and maybe a little bit outspoken. So it's interesting that you're identifying the same thought processes with regards to ensuring that your team has a mix. So it's diversity of behaviors or personalities.
Because we know that we make better decisions with diverse inputs. The other piece was, how do you build for inputs? Yeah. Right. When I started the company, I was like, everyone needs to, we don't need any input, just go do your, So how do you build for inputs when with a and the generational thing was really marked at the beginning of this time. So then we had boomers, Xers, and millennials. When we got the third group in there, then you really saw how things were different between the groups. And that was we had a lot of trial and error. So how do you set it up? And so that's where the framework came from. Understand who's in the room. What are their backgrounds? Where'd they come from? Today we have the highest number of first generation college students in our company over 20 years that we've ever had. And it is a different upbringing than those of us who were expected to go to college. Mm-hmm. So there are things that I just assume because I grew up talking things around the table. My mom went back to work, went to school, blah, blah, blah. If you never had that things that happen at the dinner table, you don't have these constructs. You may not never even know what end of day meant, right? Truly. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. It's just like, that's just how you grew up. So understanding who these people are, understanding what their strengths are, and then what do they want to do? Not just assuming, I think I'll tell you something in a second, but like, what is their goal? What do they want to do in the short or the long term? Well, I can't even think 5 years. I think, I want to know this. I'm like, okay, now we can set up work that takes advantage of their strengths, shores up their things that they need to work on, and moves them towards a goal. It is super messy, but that's okay. And then if you start actually asking that question, then you really set up the opportunity for input. The issue then becomes you can't take everybody's input, but you have to make a decision. The worst, it's just the worst. Like consent. I'm a consensus builder, but consensus decider, which is, okay, what do people think? Tell me what you think. Tell me how you want to tell me. You can tell me in person. You can on video now. You can write me an email. You can send me a Slack. You can ask for a one-on-one. You can tell me how you want. But there will be a deadline by which we will take all this input, and then we will make a decision. And then if I didn't do what you thought I should do, or if we didn't take the course that you thought the company should take, then it's going back to that person and saying, thank you for giving your input. Every piece of input informs a decision. This is the way we're going, and this is why we're going this way. And I want to keep this idea of yours here. And then I want to revisit it in 6 months, and then making sure you do that, right? Because that says, because if you just shut people down, I'm not going to do that, then they're not going to input, then they're going out the door. Millennials believe they can lead from any seat in the boat. This is what they were grown up this way. The worst thing that ever parents did for millennials was everybody wins soccer. However, the participation trophies. However, the outcome of that is everyone can lead. I can lead from anywhere. I may choose to lead today. I'm going to take a back seat tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the expectation, is that you will give me opportunity to lead the way I want to. Well, you got to make sure it works with you, right? You just don't let people go willy-nilly, right? But it just takes a lot of conversation. So, it's really messy. But the output is, if you say, here are the standards, here's all this, explain it. So the opportunity, the context is so important. Contextual to that person. That's where you start training, back to your original question. And then there's two pieces, right? Everybody has I hate the word manager, but everyone has a coach manager in the company who helps match up the work to the goal of that person. And then is their advocate. And then we have standard training that happens. And then we set up a thing like, person needs to do more writing. This person needs to do more of this person, whatever, So we figure out the individual things. We figure out the work do we have actual work that clients will pay for that will advance these skills? And we don't ask our clients to pay for the training. We put them on, where there's a double there. And then what do we have to augment it? How are we going to augment it? If we imagine that we're the only ones who can augment, we are probably wrong. So how, if we're the only ones who can do the training, so how do we augment, have our own, what is our special sauce and what is just the skill level? So, and we figure out a plan for each person. And then there's everyday training. So what are those things that everybody can participate in? So for example, everyone can be a better presenter. I'm the one who presents the most. So every Tuesday we rotate who gives a presentation. They have to go research, they have to create it, they have to present it. And at first everyone's like, this is stupid. And now everybody's such a better presenter. It's amazing. Shocking when that happens. We are writing.
Right? When you practice the habit.
So now we rotate the blog post every week. Mm-hmm. And it has to be work related. It can't just be like, I like this Sauvignon Blanc. Because we have a wine practice. So, and then you get coaching by the person who is the content person on that stuff. So everyone's improving, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's times, and then I don't have to give it all. Who's the subject matter experts in the company, and where do we need to augment? And we figure that out. So there's group, there's group practice, and there's individual. Mm-hmm. That's another very long answer for you.
Lee,
what the outcome is that people stay at Double Forte much longer than people stay at other agencies. And that's the business, that's the business reason to do it. Even if I didn't care that I wanted these people to be happy,
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot kind of come out from there in terms of like on the individual level, combining, I hear almost like skill matrices and things along those lines to better identify like, hey, what are their skill gaps, both from a technical perspective, but also from a soft skills perspective.
Very much.
As to, how can you empower them further? What are those soft skills that they need to be able to move up to the next level, the next job? And then combining that with,
it actually is a skill matrix. Can you see?
There we go. So for our listeners, we're actually seeing a skill matrix.
So it's the hard skills is the front part, research, media, social, and then the soft skills, presentation, communication, management, project management, dealing with crisis, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome.
It's a lot of work. We have to update that every few years because things change. We have to add a whole section that Twitter started, But what it does is, particularly for the youngest people in a workplace, they've come from 12 years or 16 years of education where they had a curricula and they had to hit certain things. And it may be a little different in Canada. But here you have to take all the tests, right? And you have to do all the stuff and then you go forward. And then they're used to social promotion, right? Every year just move up unless something you're just really off the mark. It's very seldom that you get held back, right? So they're used to social promotion, moving forward without hitting the 100%. Well, that is not the real world. The real world is you got to hit 85, 90, 100% to move forward, to get promoted. And no one tells you this until you don't get promoted when your friend does, even though you started on the same day, right? So by doing these skill matrices, it becomes less important the longer people are in their careers. But at the beginning of a career, to really understand those nitty gritties, helps people transition into the real world where social promotion is gone. And I did my best. It's not good enough. Let's do it again. Maybe this is the first time they've ever heard that they're not going to they don't get to stop. Yes, they pass something in, but in college, you get graded and then on to the next. In the real world, you pass something in, you get a D and you got to improve it. Right. And they haven't had this. So the skill matrix is it's not easy. Well, it is. It's a simplified way of making sure that everyone understands the different pieces and how they build on each other. Right.
Yeah, that's fair. For sure. Lee, I know that we could probably talk for another hour.
We can't talk about anything. I'm so sorry.
We're intrigued to understand what you would like to share with our subscribers. So when it comes to your top words or a phrase of inspiration, what would you want to share with the world?
Well, first, I want my words are believe. I believe in people. I believe that people can be great. I believe that people can do wonderful things if you help them do it. And I believe that no one goes alone. So I believe. The second one is communication. Nothing happens in this world without communication. And you have to keep practicing. You have to keep practicing your communication, and everything speaks, meaning how I talk to you through this camera, how I hold myself, what words I choose, not just that I'm talking to you, right? Yeah, so I'm talking to you, but if I choose, and sometimes even between Canada and the United States, there you choose a word and it means something very different to us than it means to you. It's even more pronounced between the United States and the UK, but how you choose your words about, particularly when you're, and the timing of when you choose those words is so important. So communicate's my second word. And then happiness is my third word, which is, if you believe and you can communicate, we can all have happy lives that produce if we can do those other two things, believe and communicate.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights around generational working, training, skills matrices, and your 3 words that you wanted to share with our subscribers today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Likewise. And for those who would like to learn more about Double Forte, we're going to provide a link to the company's profile on the Elevate Business page. Take good care. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the whole person leadership cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.